Hello everyone. Today's topic is to discuss about the features, how we can define the features, what consists when we define a feature, and steps required to define a feature. Let's quickly go through it. So we are at the step where we identified the customers and users requirements, expectations, perspectives, and then we might have already gone through the customer journey map or empathy map, personas, or whatever it is required for us to understand the end user's perspective. Based upon that, we will be starting defining the features and start taking a look at it and taking it to the teams. So what is it required? A feature is, if we talk from a traditional implementation approach, we can consider it as a requirement. So what is from the end user's perspective? What is the benefit the customers, the stakeholders, end users get once we implement it, once we develop it, once we deploy it, once we release it to the production? That is what we can tag, we can consider it as a feature. So when we define a feature, it typically includes a description or a name and a benefit hypothesis as well as the acceptance criteria. And make sure we need to include or consider the non-functional requirements as well as part of the feature acceptance criteria. So just to give a quick overview of what is a non-functional requirement, the security, the complaints or the performance of the functionality which you are about to develop, which you are about to implement would be considered as a non-functional requirement. Right? So we need to make sure that non-functional requirement as well is included within the feature acceptance criteria. For example, if you're talking about a payment feature, payment by credit card. Doing the actual payment is the functionality of the feature, but at the same time, the encryption, decryption of the credit card data and how we want to store the data, the complaints regarding how and what we would be storing regarding the credit card details will be considered as a non-functional requirement. So we should make sure we need to include these non-functional requirements as well as part of the feature acceptance criteria. A quick example of a feature is activating a new account for a new user registration. We know that any of the app, any of the application or the product or solution, this could be a common feature, right? So the other features might be different, but the activating a new account or creating a new account, login, all those things could be coming as a default functionalities or default features for many of the apps. That's the reason I took this as a generic reference feature. Right? So what is the feature number? F2. Yes, again, it is up to the naming convention or the standards which your organization, which your team could be following. In some cases, it could be the default number of which the tool you are using for storing your features or creating your features could be automatically generated. So nothing to worry much about it. The feature name. Here the feature name defined is activating account for new user registration. That is a feature. What is the benefit hypothesis? So we need to list down the benefit hypothesis. What is the benefit the actual customer, the end user, or we as an organization will be achieving by making use of this, by implementing this feature? We will be defining it in the benefit hypothesis. Along with that, how is it going to help us is when it comes to the prioritization of the features. When we have multiple features and we need to figure out which feature should go first, which should go second, or which should go next, or which should go for the next release, subsequent release, or whether it is required or not. By taking a quick look at the feature benefit hypothesis, we would be getting an idea, or the participants of that feature prioritization technique discussion will get an idea to go pick and choose the features based upon the benefit hypothesis from the prioritization perspective. So that's the reason benefit hypothesis plays a key role in defining the feature. Just by giving a feature name might not be sufficient, might not be clear, or might not be enough any point of time. Then moving on to the acceptance criteria of the feature, we can list down all the possible pointers, all the possible scope as part of the feature which you would like to include, which you like to consider as part of that feature. So again, I listed down a lot of pointers. So based upon this, the next steps, when we go to the next step of slicing down the feature into user stories and take it to the teams, that is where each of acceptance criteria will be considered, will be split or will be taken into the subsequent user stories. So coming to the non-functional requirements. So here, if you see, the generating an OTP and deliver to customer's email address in less than 5 seconds, right? In less than 5 seconds again, and in next 30 seconds, providing an option for regenerating an OTP in next 30 seconds. And once the OTP is provided, the authentication should be done in less than 1 second. These are indirectly the non-functional requirements of the security, the performance of how the application should respond, the React. That is what we are indirectly referring or mentioning or providing the details during the feature acceptance criteria itself. Right? We cannot simply say that I generate an OTP and send it to customer's email address. But what if it is taking beyond the limited time? Do the customers want to wait? How long they need to wait? How long they can wait? Anything as such, right? So for that reason, or if you take a search results, for example, right? If I enter a search result, search keyword in the search and click on search results, I shouldn't wait for more time to get the search results. So that's the reason we need to explicitly include the non-functional requirements as well in the feature itself. Moving ahead, if you see one point I mentioned as list to be finalized. Yes, when we define the feature itself, we might not be having each and every detail. That is fine, because the feature will be going through multiple iterations, multiple back and forth revisions, multiple back and forth discussions. So by the time we define the feature, we might not be having all the required information inputs. We can go through it as required and we can go back and revise or update, but make sure to pass on that information to your respective teams if the team already started working on the implementation. So the points to remember, just now as I mentioned, it might be a high level feature, just a simple feature name and benefit hypothesis when we define it for the first time. But again, as we go through multiple discussions, we might be refining or defining or updating, revising the feature as much as required. And we might not be doing everything in one single discussion. And make sure to identify as much of acceptance criteria, not only the acceptance criteria, the dependencies or any risk associated with the features, we can try to identify and we can try to bring it to the discussion as well. Okay. So once these features are defined, what's the next steps? So refine the features as required with the teams, pass on the features to the teams and start making them go through it, understand it, and provide any clarifications. And make sure once we have enough features to go through it in the backlog, we can start prioritizing using different prioritization techniques and make sure to plan the implementation of the features based upon the prioritization, based upon the release plan. Make sure to plan the features implementation and slice the features into smaller implementable such stories where the user story should be fitting within one single sprint or iteration. And then start with the implementation and make sure to track the features progress through. And once the feature implementation is done, you can review and accept and provide your acceptance and make it ready for the implementation or deployment to the production to the end users. Hope you find this video useful. Thank you.